Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto took a cursed bride and Desire birthed his deadly harem? Naruto times Tayuya times Kurenai times Hanabi, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And no, start a new fanfic. Ah, that's so sweet. The pink-haired girl squealed. She was hopping up and down at the foot of her bed. She smiled at the child. Makoto, the pink-haired girl, daughter of Sakura Uchiha and Sasuke Uchiha, and her black-haired twin brother Shisui Uchiha, named after his honorary uncle. The parents did the kid a favor and didn't name him Itachi. Think of the burden of the name. These two were born on an eventful afternoon 5 years ago. Imagine Tayuya's surprise when Sakura announced that she was pregnant again. It was ridiculous, and Sasuke wasn't even in the village all that often. That horny bastard. The little Inuzuka, Kaiba, a name she'd never understand how Tamaki agreed to it, was the son of Kiba and Tamaki Inuzuka. The most surprising thing about him was the fact that his partner was a cat and not a dog, as it would have been custom with the Inuzuka. Speaking of the little kitten, she hadn't seen it yet. Then again, they were forbidden in the hospital, moreover so in the maternity ward. Finally, there was Ino's brat. Just 4 years old and already a gossip queen to boot. Inori, they named her, to follow tradition. Tayuya could bet that Sai didn't find the name artistic in any way he could think of, but no one would dare talk to the post-labor Ino about that. She and Makoto made a perfect team, and she'd swear that no one could spread news as fast as them. Come to think of it, she spoke aloud, where is Shikadai? Shouldn't the Nara kid be with you as well? They all gave her a deadpan look and Shisui said, he's too lazy. Tayuya snorted. Figures. Tamari would get to swing her fan again. Damn lazy Nara clan. Just then, the door opened and Sakura walked inside, dressed in her medic uniform. For a second, Tayuya was confused about her appearance, but then she remembered that she had taken over as head medic since Tsunade retired. Sakura smiled at her and turned a glare at the children, especially her twins. Didn't I tell you to stay out of the maternity ward? Why are you all here? She questioned, looking at each of them individually. Everyone turned to stare at Ino, who squeaked and fell of the bed. Sakura rounded the bed and picked her up. I'm listening, she said dangerously. Mommy told me to, and so I. Inori stuttered. Sakura sighed and let the girl drop back onto the bed. She scrambled up to Tayuya and tried to hide under her long red hair, which was laid out to her left. Hey, Tayuya snapped. Don't you dare getting tangled in there. Inori. Everyone turned to the door, where one flustered Ino Yamanaka was standing, behind her the ever-angry doctor from the hallway. The guy seemed about ready to blow a gasket. The little blonde girl squeaked and tried to shuffle herself beneath Tayuya's pillow, but the Uzumaki wasn't having any of that. She grabbed the girl by her purple top and held her out for the mother to take. Now would someone take these bratty kids away? She huffed. Where is Tamaki when I need her? As Ino grabbed her daughter and berated her on annoying pregnant woman, the other two female Uzumaki stepped into the room. Karen and Sari both, as it was now Uzumaki clan custom, had hair long enough to reach their waist, though Sari's bangs still hid her eyes and Karen's were brushed to the side and held there by an orange clip. Tayuya grinned, remembering how Naruto had gifted it to her. For a week she refused to wear it, only for Sari to wear the same one a day after the wedding. Hey there sister, Karen greeted, did it start yet? Tayuya shook her head and fondly patted her sizable baby bump. Nah, little brat takes her time. Sari held up a note. So it's a girl. Of course it is. She's my little girl, Tayuya exclaimed. You better damn well believe it. Sakura was meanwhile ushering the children outside. But Makoto pouted, her charcoal eyes wide. Using all the cuteness that a 5-year-old possessed, she whined, but Auntie Tayuya wasn't finished with her story yet. Sakura looked back at her. Story. She shrugged back at the medic. About how I met that knucklehead and all the stuff after that. Ino perked up upon hearing that. Oh, how far did you get? The flute, Tayuya said with a faraway look in her eyes, fondly remembering the moment. My first real birthday. Though, it would have been so much better if not for that snake woman. The mood was violently broken when the door was kicked in and a loud voice shouted, children. Anko's here to get rid of her curse mark. Tayuya and Naruto jumped apart as if the other had been cloaked in lightning. But Tayuya's legs were still weak and the step backwards had been too much and her knees gave in. In an instant, Naruto had stepped forward again, catching her just as she fell backwards. They stared silently at the other, words burning to be spoken but they couldn't find their voice. Naruto guided her backwards and gently sat her down on the bed. They finally broke eye contact when the door to the room was thrown open. I'm here, she stated, grinning like a loon. She spotted Naruto standing in front of Tayuya, sitting on the bed. Did I interrupt something? Tayuya growled a bit. That you did, bitch. Can't you knock? Anko had expected a lot. Maybe some torture or shouting, a death match even, but certainly no foreplay. True, they were married, but from what Anko knew Naruto had no reason to even move a finger for the girl's well-being. People were really painting the wrong picture of him. She shook her head. Well, excuse me, little lady, but I am damn eager to get rid of that mark. I finished my mission as fast as possible to get back. She turned to Naruto. Now, pretty please. Naruto sighed and ruffled his hair a bit. Fine. Sit down on the couch please. As Anko walked out with a spring in her step, he looked back at Tayuya. I'm glad you're happy. She smiled a little and he made to follow Anko. Stepping into the living room, he stopped and frowned. Anko, why are you undressing? Anko, currently pulling her mesh shirt over her head, didn't even spare him a glance as she continued undressing. I thought you might need access, she purred. Naruto's left eyebrow twitched as he tried not to blush. No, I don't. So please, dress yourself. She just shrugged energetically, which had her very much bounce. Nah, I'm good. You do know I am married, right? Naruto asked with a sigh, his hand massaging his forehead. Anko shrugged. So, she's just one of Orochimaru's lackeys, right? Naruto froze. He removed the hand that had previously shielded his eyes very slowly and glared at Anko. His eyes were hard, and anger boiling in them that Anko hadn't seen before. Anko, he began lowly, watch what you say. Whatever she was before doesn't matter. Now she is my family. And for the record, if she's just one of Orochimaru's former lackeys, then you, Anko, are nothing more than that, if not worse, given that you still bear his seal. So don't talk bullshit. I hate hypocrites nearly as much as liars. Lips curling in distaste, Anko grumbled something under her breath and began dressing herself. Tayuya, standing behind the door to her room, had a hand over her chest and a small smile on her lips. Why did I have to be nearly crippled for all the good shit to happen to me, she whispered to herself. She took a deep breath and walked out of her room. She came to stand beside Naruto and purposefully leaned against him to take a bit of the strain of her legs. Anko watched them from the corner of her eyes. Naruto didn't stiffen when Tayuya just casually leaned against him. If anything, he even leaned into her a little as well. How could these two be so cute together? Anko would have put her money on the red hair. The boy must have had a thing for it. Now that she was fully dressed again, Naruto pushed the coffee table out of the way and sat down in front of her. She frowned when for several seconds, he didn't move at all. She was about to poke him with her feet when his eyes suddenly snapped open. Anko had to suppress a shudder. These golden eyes, they reminded her of Orochimaru for a second. But they weren't. Naruto's eyes were golden, not yellow, and there was warmth in them, not the insanity that was home to Orochimaru's very core. He held his hands out for her to take. Okay, he said, no matter what, you can't let go. I don't know if this is going to hurt, Tayuya was in a coma-like state when I did this with her, so you better brace yourself. When Anko nodded, he continued. Your seal is by far weaker than Tayuya's was, and the amount of chakra in it is not as potent. It also seems to lack the kill switch that Tayuya's had. Are you ready? Anko set her jaw and nodded. Naruto took a deep breath, and at first, she felt nothing, but then her seal came alive with a vengeance, paining her so much more than it ever had before. She could feel it. Feel the chakra move out of the seal, like acid pouring into her veins. The taste of blood had her notice that she was nearly biting through her own lips, and only when she opened her mouth did she notice she was biting back a scream. It felt all so surreal. The pain was pushing her away. It felt as if it wasn't even her body anymore, and yet it hurt so much more than everything else. The acid was now running down her arms. She could see her coils blackening underneath her skin. After an agonizing minute, the chakra from the seal had reached her hand, and then, it got worse. It was ripped from her, the chakra resisting with all its might as it clawed at her coils, grating her nerves and setting her insides on fire. Suddenly there was a pull on her neck, as if a string had been pulled taut. With a heave, the seal was pulled away. It literally exploded of her neck and was sucked inwards. Her head was snapped to the side by the force of it. With one last agonized shout, Anko passed out, the seal gone from her neck and a hole in the wall behind Naruto. Tayuya hobbled to his side and to check if he was all right. When he had taken the seal of her, he hadn't been that exhausted. You okay? She asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. He smiled tiredly up at her. So you do care, he said with a smile so sweet it set Tayuya's ears on fire. She scrunched up her face as her cheeks tinged red. Idiot, she grumbled and went to settle down on the couch. As a fact, the unconscious Anko was sprawled out all across. Tayuya sniffed angrily and shoved her off the couch. Even as she impacted on the carpet below, she didn't stir. Naruto pushed himself up and looked down at Anko. Then he looked over at his coffee table and back at Anko again. Shrugging, he pulled Anko out of the way by her feet and returned the coffee table to its original place. So, Tayuya said, we gonna leave the bitch there? Naruto shrugged. Hell, I'm too tired to make even one clone, and I sure as hell won't carry her back. Tayuya snorted a laugh, and after a little hesitation, and a determined but thoughtful look in her face, she leaned on Naruto's shoulder. She glared up at him, blushing a little, when he grinned tiredly. Don't get any ideas, lover boy. Karen and Sari opened the door to Naruto's apartment with a loud bang, jolting husband and wife awake, who had fallen asleep on the couch. Happy birthday, Karen exclaimed. Sari, standing right behind her, was waving an impressive red banner with black letters which read the same as Karen had shouted. Naruto had exploded of the couch when the door was banged open. His feet got caught under the small table before him and he did a spectacular salto right through the hole in the wall. Tayuya fell sideways as Naruto jumped, falling onto the couch face first with a muffled, "Oof." What the hell? Karen wondered as she and Sai stepped inside. The two of them chose to ignore the unconscious women in the doorway and carried their stuff inside. Before Tayuya could even begin to curse, Karen put an enormous cake down in front of her. Why is there a hole in your wall? Tayuya blinked owlishly at the round cake that, but of course, was shaped like an Uzumaki spiral. What is that? While Tayuya was busy being sleepy and confused, Sari took it upon herself to attach her banner over the kitchen range that separated the living room from the kitchen. Happy with her handiwork, she pulled out a scroll from which she unsealed the teddy bear she had with her in the morning. Nodding to herself, she placed it on the couch to sit beside Tayuya. She the girl using the bear's fluffy paws and smiled widely at her when she turned around to face her. When she didn't respond aside from the confused look she got, Sari continued to poke her with the teddy bear. Tayuya swapped the fluffy bear away. Stop, Shesh. What is all this? She said, gesturing to the cake and the banner. Sari rolled her eyes and twisted Tayuya's head towards the banner and pointed at it. Karen laughed. It's your birthday party, dummy. Then she looked around. Say, where is Naruto? Hanging out in the tree outside of the apartment was the young man in question. Having launched himself right into the branches of the green waiting outside, Naruto was busy brushing leaves out of his hair. God damn it, he grumbled as he turned around in the leaves to gain some sort of footing on the bigger branch below. But just as he was about to hop down the tree, his still enhanced senses picked up a presence nearby. Whirling around, and losing his balance, Naruto managed to spot a masked ninja, an Anbu, flicker away from atop the water tower across the street before he oh so ungracefully dropped out of the tree. But his mask had been blank. No animal, nor was there any kind of sign Naruto could have seen. Just a blank white mask and, judging by the fleeting feel he got for the masked ninja's emotions, he had none. At the very moment Naruto tried to ascertain what the figure felt, it felt nothing at all. Well, that's strange, Naruto mumbled as he pushed himself off the grassy ground. More than strange, the voice of the fox roared through his mind, even though Naruto was sure that the fox wasn't roaring, just talking. His size just amplified the volume to truly painful levels. So Naruto winced once before the fox continued. This human is but an empty shell. He has been broken into servitude. Naruto frowned. Seriously, that sounds an awful lot like Danzo's minions. He would have contemplated further if not for the shoe that hit his head. What the hell? He rubbed his head as he picked up the fluffy purple slipper. That, as Naruto recalled, was Tayuya's. He had placed them in her room for her cold feet. Looking up to the hole in his wall, he saw Tayuya waving down angrily at him, though she seemed more happy than angry at the time. Get up here, she shouted, and Naruto had a kind sense of deja vu. So he mock saluted with a brisk, "Yes, Mom," and used the body flicker to appear right in front of her. He knelt down and offered her slipper. Your shoe, kind lady. Tayuya halted to process what he was doing but just ended up blushing as he took her foot and slipped the shoe back on. She was about to verbally kick his for acting like a prissy when he just turned around with an exclamation of, "Ooh. Cake." Tayuya decided to let it slip. Only this once. About 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Naruto, who had been stuffing his face with cake while Tayuya tried to defend the remnants of her birthday cake, groaned and placed his plate onto the table and headed for the door. Opening it, he was surprised to see Tsunade and Shizune. Granny, he exclaimed in surprise, what are you doing here? Tsunade huffed. Well, the wife of a clan head is celebrating her birthday and the Hokage has decided to make a courtesy call. Naruto just nodded. Aha, so it was your Anbu who watched us. A frown appeared on Tsunade's face and she glanced back at Shizune, who frowned as well and shook her head. We don't have any Anbu watching you, Tsunade said. Damn, Naruto cursed. Then I need to talk to Sai about a little gardening. Tsunade caught the meaning and grit her teeth. Oh, I swear, Danzo's gonna have a bad day tomorrow. Shaking of the bad mood, Naruto bid the two women inside. Pointedly ignoring the unconscious form of Anko in the doorway, they congratulated Tayuya, who appeared extremely uncomfortable but happy nonetheless. She just wasn't used to all this, to her own birthday party. She would have to get used to it, Naruto told her, and it made her smile. She could deal with that. Yeah. Cake. Naruto mentally noted that Tayuya loved strawberry marmalade and chocolate. She nearly inhaled whatever piece of cake she got. Choji would have been impressed. Now then, Tsunade announced as the sun began to settle, it's time to start the real party. That said, Tsunade produced 4 bottles of sake from the confides of her cleavage. Tayuya wondered if there was a hollow space in there. Shizune looked appalled. Lady Tsunade. She shrieked but was quickly silenced when the Hokage shoved one of the bottle halfway down her throat. Forced to swallow a good amount of sake before she got rid of the intruding bottle, Shizune found that maybe it wasn't that bad after all. That and the words felt too heavy to be spoken. Tayuya laughed heartily and Naruto wondered when she had gotten her hands on a bottle herself, and wondered even more so when she had emptied half of it. And 5 minutes later, Naruto found himself with his very own bottle. He had never really been one for drinking but found himself unable to resist the challenge to drink Tayuya and Karen under the table. Sari was excused from this, her throat not in the best of conditions to allow alcohol in. I promise. Tsunade slurred to Sari, leaning onto the younger girl, I'll heal fish. AFF, affliction of Yorsh. The Uzumaki could but nod, her hands were trapped under Tsunade's bosom as the woman lay halfway on top of her on the couch. Sari took a moment to look around. Karen was drunk. It was easiest to be described as that. Currently, she was crouching unsteadily over Anko's still unconscious form and was drawing something on her exposed belly with some red crayons. Or maybe it was lipstick. Shizune was explaining to Naruto how to properly give birth to a child. And Naruto sat there, listening with rapt attention and half-lidded eyes as if he was sure to be able to do it after her instructions were over. Tayuya was sitting besides Naruto, or his lap, really. She kind of lay halfway across his lap, sometimes only her legs, and every now and then she would slide to sit completely in his lap. And whenever she did, Naruto's arm would wander to snake around her waist. After a minute of being held, her face slowly turned red, she let out some profanities and slid off again, only to repeat the process 2 minutes later. Sari heard snoring from Tsunade and resigned herself to sleep smothered by the 5th Hokage when suddenly someone knocked at the door. Tsunade, being the hardened shinobi she was, reacted instantly and launched herself up and, well, she did as Naruto did and flew out through the hole in the wall. Karen squeaked and fell forward onto Anko, and in the same breath, Shizune fell backwards as Naruto jumped to his feet with Tayuya in his arms. There was a tense second of silence only broken by the snoring of Anko and the cursing from outside that was no doubt Tsunade damning the existence of a tree. Naruto walked to the door, Tayuya still clinging to him as she tried to appear as intimidating as possible in his arms. Slowly and carefully, Naruto reached for the doorknob, as if it would suddenly move out of the way if he moved too fast. The door opened and Tayuya tried her best to snarl, but a fit of giggles hit her right then. So when the door opened and Kakashi Hatake, a big plushy fox in his arms, got to see a pretty interesting picture. There was his student, a red-headed girl in his arms a second before he suddenly just dropped her and shouted, Kakashi Sensei. Followed by a mix of giggles and curses by Tayuya from the ground. Behind his student, at the end of the hallway, was Anko, lying passed out in the doorway with Karen on top of her. The red-headed girl glanced over the sizable mounds of the passed-out ninja, eyeing him like an anxious animal. On the couch he could see through the door was a girl he hadn't met before. She looked positively amused and waved lamely at him using the paw of a stuffed teddy bear. As he returned the wave and was about to say something to Naruto, who was currently scooping up his wife, he was suddenly punched in the side and sent flying. Tsunade took Kakashi's place and glared inside the apartment. Shomon. Answer the damn door. And with that, she passed out. Tayuya was swatting weakly at Naruto as Kakashi was dragging himself and the plushie back up the stairs to the apartment. You dropped me, you idiot. She slurred, another giggle escaping her. I'm sorry. Naruto blurted after a second of apparently really hard thinking. I'll make it up to you. Whatever you want. Face scrunching up in thought, Naruto stared at what he would have called the cutest expression she had ever made. She was biting her lower lip while at the same time her tongue stuck out at the edge of her mouth. Her eyes were unfocused and her brows knitted together as she sat there in front of him. Eventually she noticed his intense staring and hid her face in her hands. If an overdose of cute and beautiful could cause nosebleed, Naruto would have died this very instant. You, she suddenly said, and he nearly squeaked in surprise, you are going to sleep with me. No way you said that. Ino laughed hysterically. Karen laughed loudly as well while Sakura looked absolutely scandalized. Sari had left the room with the children in tow, furiously scribbling notes to keep them occupied while she was out to find the rest of the parents, mainly Naruto. Tayuya stuck her nose up in the air. Sure did. There was a notable amount of pride in her voice. Damn, I don't remember anything after Kakashi waltzed in, Karen mumbled. Ino looked at her strangely. You had a blackout. Karen laughed weakly. Maybe. She never could hold her liquor, Tayuya said, and Karen glared at her. Anyways. Naruto's head tilted as he tried to comprehend what Tayuya had just said. In fact, it continued to tilt until he could not lean his head to the side anymore, and so his whole body began tilting sideways until he, with Tayuya still in his arms, just rolled sideways into the pantry. However that may have been possible, Tayuya ended up beneath him as he just stared at her and managed an intangible, huh. Defiance struck Tayuya's features, though the seriousness she intended to display would not reach through the alcohol in her system. Instead, she managed an adorable glare coupled with a pout. You heard me all right, she slurred, but to Naruto it sounded more like purring anyways. I'm tired. Wanna sleep, idiot. It took Naruto a total of 14 seconds to incorporate her statement into her earlier request, not that Tayuya even noticed that there was such a long pause. The moment she had finished speaking, Tayuya had turned her head away and spotted a box of chocolate in the shelf. In no time at all she was happily munching away at the contents of the box. Delicious, she'd mutter ever so often while she watched Naruto think. He looked so handsome, even with his eyes drooping and his hair so disheveled. She buried her embarrassment in the chocolate until she was suddenly lifted up again. Naruto looked down at her and smiled. Sleeping does sound good. She never noticed that the slur had left his voice and his eyes were no longer glazed over. She just nodded happily to herself and quickly devoured another piece of the delicious sweets. Swiftly stepping over Anko and Shizune on his way to the bedroom, his bedroom, Naruto made sure to get Tayuya to leave the chocolate behind. These stains wouldn't come out easily, after all. He idly wondered where his sudden clarity was coming from as he carried Tayuya inside and laid her on the bed. He took his shirt off without any hesitation, maybe there was still some alcohol left, and could barely stop Tayuya from rolling off the bed. She snorted a laugh and began wiggling out of her clothes. All the water vanished from Naruto's mouth as he watched her less than sensual way of undressing. He had a hard time deciding what the hell he should do now. Dress her again so she wouldn't kill him in the morrow. Just leave her here and hope she wouldn't notice him leaving. But deep down, he didn't want to leave her alone. He wanted to lay down with her, hold her and keep her warm. But wasn't he taking advantage of her drunken state? He looked over at her when the shuffling of cloth subsided. Her amethyst eyes stared at him and he was shocked to see the tears in them. Tayuya, what? So you don't want to, huh? There was no slur in her voice anymore, just a sad note, anger, disappointment. So in the end, I'm just the former lackey of the snake bastard. She turned away from him and pulled the blankets up to cover half her head. That's not true. Naruto snapped with more anger than he had intended to. He left her no time for a snarky remark as he just slipped underneath the sheets behind her. She tensed for a second as he paused before pulling her into him, laying his arm across her flat stomach. Tayuya lifted her head without a word as he slid his other arm beneath it. Resting on his biceps, she exhaled almost happily. He could feel a hint of mischief from her and he gasped. You baited me into this, he exclaimed in shock. Tayuya remained silent. After a second, he snorted and laughed a little. Tayuya, he said, you do know that, please, would have been enough. Shut up. Wanna sleep, was all of an answer he got. And he was fine with it. He smiled and pulled her closer. Somehow, she fit there, lying against him, perfectly. Kakashi stumbled into the apartment with the relatively unharmed plush toy still clutched in his hands. He raised an eyebrow as he watched Sari drag the passed-out Tsunade onto the couch in Naruto's living room. Walking up the hallway, he halted when he stood in front of the sleeping Anko. He dimly remembered Karen being here as well. Crouching down beside her, he poked at her face. He idly noted the childish drawing of a snake on her exposed stomach. Wakey, wakey Anko. Time to go home, he said. I'm not going to. Suddenly, Anko's eyes shot open and her hands came up to his neck. There was a tense moment of apprehension, but her hands merely encircled his neck, not strangulating him. Tension morphed into confusion when she pulled herself up to him and pressed her forehead against his. Shut up and kiss me. Kakashi's one visible eye widened. Oh, he quickly substituted with a pillow from the couch, nearly landing atop of Tsunade in the process. But he wasn't allowed a single moment of respite as Anko appeared behind him. Oh Kakashi, she purred, eyes gleaming, guess who got something to celebrate. Kakashi whimpered as he fled, jumping through the hole in the wall. Mommy. Get that sweet piece of back here. Anko's finally free and ready for some fun. And with that, both vacated the apartment. Sari was left standing in the war zone of an apartment and sighed. This must have been the most up-clan birthday party ever, she thought to herself before retreating into her own apartment, not caring for Karen, who lay passed out underneath the coffee table with Shizune. Danzo sent the messenger away and returned to his chair. Things needed to happen quickly now that the two other Uzumaki were here. There was no need for that foul-mouthed woman anymore. And Danzo knew just the man to take her of his hands. He flared his chakra in a specific frequency and a door opened in the wall behind him, previously being hidden from view. A man with a nondescript mask stepped out and bowed without a word. Danzo held a scroll out for him to take. To Orochimaru. No delays, he ordered, not turning around to face his underling. The masked ninja simply took the scroll and vanished through the hidden door. Danzo stood from his chair and walked out of his office. It was time to redirect some Anbu patrols. Tayuya awoke with a headache worse than anything the cursed seal had ever done to her. She stifled a groan as she cracked one eye open. This, she realized, was not her room. As more and more awareness returned to her hungover mind, she also realized that the arm her head rested on and the arms slung around her waist were also most definitely not hers. Memories slowly trickled back into the forefront of her mind and she groaned in embarrassment. Why did she do that? Though in hindsight, she couldn't deny that she hadn't slept this good since, well, since the last time she had slept in the same bed as Naruto. That guy was just too good of a heater. A deep, sleepy chuckle from the man in question had her freeze up. Morning sunshine, he whispered into her hair, how's your head doing? Killing me, she moaned and clenched her eyes shut against the light that fell through the window. I'm never drinking again. He laughed, the noise vibrating against her, bare back. Gods above, where were her clothes? You say that now, but Granny has another reason today to bust out some of her sake. That's so. Damn, I'm gonna die. Naruto just chuckled quietly and pulled her closer to him. So, she said, why am I? The Uzumaki's eyes shot open wide as he paled considerably. His calm and collected attitude vanishing instantly. And I take it that's your knee and me ass cheeks. Ah, yes. Now he was starting to sweat. Shit. Goddamn male anatomy. Nice try. He could hear her knuckles crack. And somewhere in the pure world, a man with long white hair and red facial markings was writing in a small notebook, giggling like a schoolgirl until a woman with long red hair drove his noggin into the ground. Rubbing his sore head, Naruto stood in the kitchen, fixing himself and Tayuya some breakfast. He glanced over his shoulder at the redhead at the table and immediately turned around again as she shot him a death glare. Damn it. It wasn't his fault that she somehow managed to undress herself and him in her sleep. It was her body that caused him to. Yeah, no, not going there. After placing a bowl of rice with a few hastily produced side dishes in front of her, Tayuya mellowed down a little. Also, the plush fox she had in her lap helped. The Nine Tails felt honored and ridiculed at the same time, a feat only achievable by millennia-old, grumpy entities that somehow came off as a fox. Say, wanna go to the compound after breakfast? He asked as he sat down in front of her. She didn't meet his eyes but nodded anyways. Good enough for him, Naruto decided. It was when he and Tayuya went outside that they found the fifth Hokage still passed out in front of their door. I expected a lot, Tayuya said, but not the Hokage. Where the hell is Anko, by the way? No idea, Naruto responded as he proceeded to prod and poke Tsunade with a wooden stick. I'm gonna signal the Anbu, she's gonna pick up her and Shizune. She's still here. I didn't even see her. She's under the table in the living room. Karen's there too. Tayuya looked somewhat amazed. The table isn't that damn big. Did they curl up down there? I suppose. The moment he had finished the sentence, an Anbu with a cat mask dropped down in front of him. Yugao, Naruto said with a nod. If you would, please. I'm not supposed to ask how you know my call sign, but I'm intrigued, the woman with the purple hair said, curiously peering down at her Hokage who was currently drooling all over herself. I can pick it up ever since I became a sage. Granny trusts you the most, so she uses your call sign pretty often. He stood and stretched once before jabbing his thumb back at the apartment. You mind taking her and Shizune back to the tower? Yugao nodded briskly and headed inside. Naruto and Tayuya were walking down the stairs when they heard Yugao's voice from out of one of the windows. Now please, Lady Shizune, let go of Miss Karen. Please. It was followed by a long suffering sigh. Wow, Tayuya said, sucks to be her. The following blast of killing intent assured both of them that Yugao had heard her just fine. The compound was coming along nicely. According to the workers, they could move into the main building by the end of the next week. Naruto came to the conclusion that a giddy and happy Tayuya was pretty damn cute. The way she was skipping all over the premise while simultaneously trying to hide the fact that she was just incredibly happy about her new home being nearly ready. So imagine her, skipping and hopping like Anko had just found out Orochimaru had died, while she simultaneously scowled like Tsunade when her sake sources ran dry. After the foreman kicked them out because Tayuya was distracting the workers and because Naruto glared every worker into a catatonic state of fear, they headed into the market. Tayuya was laughing her of when he tried on something orange when he was reminded of the day's date all too violently. Sakura, with the grace of a flying sack of bricks, broke into the shop and shouted, "Happy birthday!" And that's how the surprise party in a random backyard that apparently belonged to the Hyuga clan began. His momentary confusion was only extended when from seemingly everywhere his friends popped up to congratulate him. Team 8, Team 10, who Naruto didn't see until it was too late, Team Guy, Iruka, Tsuki and Ayame, the gate guards Izumo and Katetsu, Gaara and his siblings, whereas the former's congratulations were wholly lost in the chorus of everyone else's voice. Koyuki, are better known as Princess Gale, Karen and Sari, Shizune and a hungover Tsunade, and last but also definitely the latest, Kakashi. How Naruto could have forgotten his own birthday? Maybe it was the fact that his manhood woke up in a far too dangerous yet very pleasing position which had earned him a severe concussion. Or maybe it was the fact that Tayuya wasn't as modest as she tended to enact when she walked out of the bathroom with less than a towel. In fact, Tayuya had twisted a lot things in his life and, really, as long as it wasn't his throat or other useful extremities, Naruto didn't mind. Geez, this woman, and she just happened to be his wife. Damn, and why was he happy about that again? His birthday had never really been celebrated before. It just never came up. He only ever did so, had done so. With Jiraiya. No matter what anyone may have said about the man, no matter what he himself said about him, Naruto missed him more than he'd ever find himself able to voice aloud. He remembered his first birthday with him. He got him a set of clothes. Sure, they were hideous orange and, sure, it was a crime to wear these as a ninja and even more so as a marked man as he was, but it felt so nice to just have them. A gift, the first he hadn't received from the third. Sakura gifted him a book. He was surprised when she wasn't sarcastic about it, nor did she tease him in any way about the fact that he didn't seem to know what to do with it. The book was about basic medical techniques and was written by Tsunade. It was, if he thought about it, damn useful to have. He was not surprised by the training weights he got from Lee. He didn't expect anything less. Nor did the speech he got from guy that came with a green jumpsuit. Never would he wear it, but he couldn't just not accept it. Naruto teared up when Tyuki and Ayame declared that they would write up a contract with the Uzumaki clan, and in exchange for protection, the clan would eat for free at the noodle bar. He had no idea what Hinata said, stuttered when she handed him the recipe for her ointment, but he thanked her nonetheless. Shino, as weird as it was, gifted him an ant farm. He was told that they were special, trained to defend a perimeter he could set up for them, working like an invisible alarm for intruders. That could actually be useful at some point. Besides, these things looked awesome. Can you imagine bluish ants that seem to carry swords and armor? Cool, I tell you. And don't you dare argue. Neji's gift was interesting. Naruto's eyebrow twitched when the Hyuga handed him a book on etiquette. But then again, it could be incredibly useful as clan head. From Choji, he got something he didn't expect. Property. A lot of property. Choji, Naruto said as he stared at the deed, I can't just, that's too much. The Akamichi shook his head. Naruto, without you, there wouldn't be any of us left alive. This property, it's just a little old shop that had been in the outskirts and wasn't damaged by the attack. In fact, it is right next to the Uzumaki compound. So please, in the name of my clan, take it and put it to good use. Happy birthday, Naruto. Stunned didn't even compare to how Naruto felt then, but he managed to thank Choji nonetheless. Things seemed to slow down then, and Naruto found himself sitting under a tree, watching as his friend stood at the tables Choji had borrowed from one of his clan's many restaurants, most of which had already been rebuilt. Kiba and Lee were competing in something Naruto couldn't discern, but it involved push-ups in a barrel full of sake. Already Naruto was praying the Lee didn't come into contact with the alcohol. Gaara sitting down at his side startled Naruto out of his musings. 18 years, huh, the Cage mused, more emotion audible than Naruto remembered ever being evident in the redhead's voice. Time passes fast. I'm already feeling old. He grinned. I guess that makes Granny ancient then. How are you doing? Very good actually, Gaara responded. I just signed of some emergency supplies for Konoha before coming here. You have an unreasonable demand for minerals these days. Naruto snorted. I wonder why that might be. Didn't you yourself blow up a big part of the village? I hear the biggest crater was made by you and the Kyuubi. Ah, let's not talk about that. Gaara smiled. As you wish. He looked over to where Shikamaru was trying to ward off Tamari by bringing Lee between them, who was still doing push-ups. Without hands. Damn, I hear you have married. Naruto nodded. Yep, that happened. And when would you introduce my sister-in-law to me? A smile hushed over Naruto's face as he tried to keep his features under control. It was nice to know that Gaara considered him his brother. Tayuya, my dearest wife, is right over there, Naruto said and pointed at one of the tables. Gaara's gaze drifted over to it. Present at said table was a redhead that could only have been Tayuya, laughing together with another girl with shorter red hair at Ino, whose hair were tied to Choji's belt at the boy's back. In an effort to untie his teammate, Choji turned to reach for the point her hair were knotted to his belt and dragged Ino along in the process of steadily turning around himself. Tayuya was laughing so hard, she had to hold onto Karen for support. Gaara merely raised an amused eyebrow at them and turned back to Naruto, who smiled fondly at her. She never had a chance to have fun before, he said suddenly, his eyes still fixed on her, watching her long hair sway and bounce as Karen, also laughing like a maniac, tried to pry Tayuya off her person. I'm just glad she can now. Gaara tilted his head. You love her, don't you? Naruto flinched, as if he had forgotten about Gaara's presence. I've known her for a month and a half, you know. He gazed over at Tayuya once more. And, you may be right. Kakashi, leaning against the tree Naruto and Gaara sat at, smiled at his student. Your father would be proud. That and you swear like your mother. Naruto jumped. Geez, Kakashi, you're late, by the way. The man shrugged and pulled his book from one of his pouches. One can't be late for a surprise party. And yet you were the last to arrive, Naruto countered. Another shrug from Kakashi was all he got. Lazy. Naruto huffed. You rang. Naruto looked up to see Shikamaru standing before him with a shogi board. Care for a game? I wondered if you've gotten too lazy for that, Naruto joked. Huffing, Shikamaru set the board down. It will take some time for that to happen. Doubt it, Naruto countered, moving a piece and beginning the game. I put my money on Tamari. Once you admit it, you'll be too busy for shogi. Gaara raised an eyebrow. You do realize that you're talking about my sister, right? Shikamaru's nose twitched as he made his move. Yes, Lord Casecage, I'm aware, Naruto said in mock affront. Doesn't change that she has the hots for Shikamaru here. Since when did you become an expert in that? Shikamaru asked, annoyance and fear for his integrity written all over his face. Naruto moved his piece and smirked. I'm married. Check. By the way. Shikamaru frowned down at the board. Or so I've been told. I remember her, you know. I assume you know who she is. Who she was, Shikamaru. Now, she is my wife, Naruto corrected, frowning as all his moves seemed to suddenly backfire on him. I understand that this went down to return the Uzumaki clan to the village. But that's not all, or is it? Naruto shook his head. No. He said with a small smile. She's special. To me, that is. Shikamaru nodded slowly. Is it? Because of the red hair? Why is everyone saying that? Naruto exclaimed. Kakashi tapped Naruto's head with his book. Because, little genin, it's true. Now hold on a second. Naruto protested. Quiet, runt. The man is right, the fox rumbled in his head. Naruto could feel the giant beast nod sagely in his cage. Gaara also nodded. That does seem to be a likely assumption. Naruto moaned. Would you stop that? It isn't just the red hair. So you do admit that the hair has something to do with it, Shikamaru concluded as he decimated Naruto's pieces. Lay off, it's my birthday. Naruto whined. He saw Tayuya watching him and forgot for a second what he even wanted to say, so he decided to not say it in the first place. Hey, Tayuya, he called out to her. She seemed a little surprised, as well as a little annoyed, that he addressed her but walked over to him anyways. What's up, lover boy? There was an underlying anger in her voice, something Naruto couldn't comprehend at that moment. He'd understand if she would have been annoyed, but angry. He tried to think of something he did that would make her angry. Was it about this morning? No, she decked him for that already. So what was it? Coming up absolutely clueless, he decided simply ask her. But in a more private setting. He jumped up and took her hand. Come on, he said, smiling at her. She reddened but managed a reasonably convincing scowl. We'll be right back, he said to the others as he dragged her away from the party. As he had dragged her a sufficient amount of distance, he suddenly stopped. You're angry, he said. It was a statement, not a question. Tayuya huffed. Hell yes I am. Naruto had yet to release her hand, but he didn't even notice it as he spoke. If it's about this morning, I already apologized. It's not like I could help it. Tayuya blinked. What? No, it's not about that. She shook her head. You idiot. Do you know what today is? My birthday. Naruto dared to ask. Exactly. Tayuya huffed. And I didn't even know. I don't even have a present or some shit. Naruto's confused expression softened into a smile. You don't have to get me anything, you know. It's not important. But it's important to me. Tayuya retorted. You got me the flute. Her hand wandered to the thin pouch on her thigh. It was my first birthday since I can remember, and when I get to celebrate the first goddamn birthday of someone else, I wanna do it right. Especially since it's yours. She stomped her foot angrily, but Naruto didn't step back. So you better let me gift you something. If that's what you want, Naruto said with a smile. I'd be happy to accept whatever you give me. At that moment all the anger melted of Tayuya and left behind a flustered mess. Fine. Then you better close your eyes, damn it. Naruto had been prepared for a lot of things, mentally that is, but not this kind of situation. You don't proofread smut for 3 years and then don't know where this sort of thing leads up to. Was she serious? She would kiss him. Or, a darker part of Naruto's mind supplied, she would kick his balls into next week. But she didn't murder him when he woke up next to an equally her. So, logically speaking, she was going to kiss him. But logic took off so fast Naruto didn't even have time to keep his composure. His calm and halfway mature demeanor, on which he had really hard on, left him in a flash and he gaped at her with wide eyes. Holy shit, she was going to kiss him. Deep breaths, he told himself, deep breaths. The heinous part of his traumatized shinobi brain told him that he shouldn't be happy about this, but that happiness was about to fry his poor heart. Hold on a minute, wasn't he supposed to close his eyes? His brain somehow managed to take in images despite his mind already being on fire. Tayuya appeared to be scowling while at the same time fidgeting and smiling. How she pulled off the fusion of three so greatly differing expressions was absolutely beyond him, but she looked beautiful, if not a little scary, all the same. But she was hesitating. Was she doubting herself? Doubting that this was the right thing? Doubting if he wanted it? If she wanted it? Irritation worked its way into the mix of emotions currently residing in Naruto's head. How dare such a petty thing like doubt put a wall between them? The fact that his emotional turmoil had lasted no longer than a second eluded him completely as some sort of courage surged through him and he took a step forward. Tayuya blinked in surprise and found herself too surprised to even say something as his arms captured her against him. He smiled softly at her. Only if you do the same, he whispered into her ear and she shivered. What the air you? And then she did as he asked, because suddenly his lips were lightly pushed against hers. Eyes fluttering shut, she swallowed the surprised noise she wanted to make and just let it happen. It wasn't perfect, and for a first kiss, that was absolutely fine. There were more teeth involved than both of them had expected and the bruising wouldn't result from the intensity of the debacle. But Tayuya could honestly say that this turned out better than she imagined. And tastier. The whole thing lasted maybe 7 seconds, but they both smiled somewhat drunkenly at the other. You suck at this, lover boy, she said with a cheeky grin. He laughed. I'll have you know, you were better than Sasuke, if only barely. She made a face and swatted his chest. I don't wanna know how you can even say that. He shrugged, still smiling. Yeah, I try to forget. She snorted and put her forehead against his collarbone. You still suck. His hand under her chin lifted her head to meet his eyes. Half lidded and darkened with something she couldn't put a finger on. Maybe, he whispered, but I hear practice makes perfect. Tayuya could feel his heart jump under his hands and see the nervousness in his eyes. But he was honest. She smiled wickedly. So I've heard. It would have been just under a second before their lips would have met once more that Kakashi made an appearance. Oh, am I interrupting something? Naruto could feel the violent curse Tayuya unleashed against his throat before they both took a step back from each other. Her eyes were a storm of emotion and they broke contact just after a second to send a death glare at Kakashi, who leaned against a nearby tree. Naruto growled in annoyance. For sake, Kakashi. This is literally the one time you should have been late. Yeah, Tayuya agreed vehemently. Get lost, old man. Now, the silver-haired Jonin said, stepping out from behind the tree. In his hands was a small box, just about a bit bigger than the man's hand. Leaving you alone for any longer. Be honest, you wouldn't have returned to the party that way. Naruto opened his mouth only to shut it again, turn quite red and look at his feet. Tayuya wasn't so meek about it. You, she spat, though there was an audible lack of venom in her voice. Kakashi laughed a little. You didn't deny it. He pushed the box in Naruto's hands, ignoring the stewing Tayuya and all the ominous insults to his person. What is? Hey, where did he go? Naruto frowned. Kakashi had flickered away already. Sucker. He eyed the box in his hands. It was made of wood, looking worn, with a small red cord sealing it. What is it? Tayuya asked, almost innocently, as if she wasn't hanging on his shoulders then. He didn't even comprehend why she was there in the first place. I don't. Why are you on my back? He asked. She smirked, pressing her chest against his neck, wriggling for good measure. Are you complaining, lover boy? W wouldn't dream of it, Naruto rasped as he fingered the cord on the box. Tayuya laughed against his ear. Oh, I'm pretty sure that you do dream along these lines. Naruto swallowed. Why the hell was she teasing him? You wish. I know, she purred back and he nearly dropped the box. Right then Naruto felt an immense amount of dislike for Kakashi. Where would this have gone if he hadn't interrupted? Oh gods, if Tsunade broke out the sake again. He shook his head. Time for a headache would be after the binge drinking. Pulling the cord of the box, Naruto carefully lifted the lid. A kunai? Tayuya asked, looking at the three-pronged weapon. It appeared used, the blade was chipped at various places and the left tip appeared to have broken off a little. The handle was what seemed to be bronze and carved in it was an incredibly intricate seal. Tayuya couldn't even read a single letter of it. And Naruto, he stared at it with a fond smile. He picked it up and held it reverently in his hand. Looking at her out from the corner of his eye, he said, "It's my dad's." Kakashi must have held onto it all these years. Tayuya slid of his back and turned him around. The fourth Hokage, right? He nodded absently as he traced the still sharp blade. Then he looked at her in surprise. You know, did I mention that before? She smiled wryly. The snake bastard had a file on all the genin of Konoha. You, as the Jinchuriki, had the biggest. Huh. So even Orochimaru knew. Naruto snorted. I wonder to this day how the villagers didn't notice. I mean, I was his goddamn mirror image. Tayuya nodded. Well, no longer, lover boy. Now you are more than that. Warmth crawled into the depths of his heart. That's so, he managed breathlessly. Geez, she made his heart beat way too fast to be healthy. She grinned. Of course. You are that dumb they had married to me while I was in a damn coma. Naruto or some shit if I remember correctly. He laughed loudly, resting his head against hers. She swatted playfully at him. Get that greasy hair out of my face. Oh, is it? He asked, rubbing the mop of orange hair, with the occasional red strand, right in her face. Tayuya laughed as it tickled her face. She cursed and hit him but her resistance was meek, she enjoyed this far too much. Kakashi, standing on the branch of a tree not too far away, watched the two of them. He had never seen Naruto so genuinely happy, laughing like that. It pained him to think how he must have felt all these years of isolation. Even with his friends, Naruto still appeared alone to some degree. The only one who ever had some sort of understanding with him had been Sasuke. And when the Uchiha left, a part of Naruto broke beyond repair. When Jiraiya died, that part crumbled away and Naruto was forced to mature faster than everyone else. His friends didn't want to notice, but he was no longer the knucklehead they once met, no longer the loudmouth that had once annoyed them in the academy. Kakashi slid off his headband and looked up to the moon. I'm sorry, he whispered into the wind. His hand came up and pulled down the mask that hid his lower face. I should have been there for him, from the very beginning. I hope you can forgive me, sensei, and smile upon the man he became despite my failings. It could have been a coincidence, but it seemed to Kakashi that one of the stars above shone especially bright. It shone a pure yellow, near golden color down on him. With a final smile he pulled the mask up and put his headband back on. I see, he said, the future it is then. He vanished in a swirl of leaves, going to visit the memorial one final time. It was time to move on. Naruto was still laughing when they returned to the party but was loath to see that Tsunade was raising a cup into the night sky, toasting on her rotten luck. In the crowd he could see Tenten taking a bottle out of Lee's hand and he made a mental note to thank her later. Kiba was glaring at Neji and Neji was glaring right back at him. Between the two young men, on the table they shared, was a single, and obviously the last, cinnamon roll. The third person at the table was Hinata, whose eyes had a predatory gleam to them as she eyed the sweet pastry. Akamaru was fast asleep underneath the table and Ino busied herself studying the dog intensely with a dazed look. Already Naruto could smell the sake in the air. He really hoped that his Uzumaki vitality extended to his liver. Well, he was going to find out sooner or later. As soon as Iruka, who had been standing a little aside from all the festivities, spotted him, the gifting began anew. Iruka pulled a metal plate from his vest and handed it to him. That is, Naruto looked fondly at the plate. It was to be used for a headband, he was sure of it. Engraved into it was the Uzumaki swirl in great detail. It had been polished but there were traces of use. He looked at Iruka who smiled sheepishly. It took me a while, he said, but I found it eventually. It was your mother's. The following explanation would have needed air, which was denied to him by a fierce hug from Naruto. Just as he released his teacher from his hug, someone cleared his throat behind him. Kiba waved for him to come closer. So, the Inuzuka said, some time ago we had a litter of pups from one of our wolfhounds and well, I thought you might wanna see this little buddy. Kiba picked up a basket and held it out for Naruto to take. I guess, Naruto said, uncertain as to what he should expect. Tayuya was right beside him when he took the basket and crouched down with it. Sleeping on a shockingly orange blanket was a reddish puppy, its black-tipped ears twitching ever so often as it seemed to hug its overly long and fluffy tail. Tayuya sucked her lower lip in and Naruto could tell that she was trying not to coo. It made her look adorable, nearly as adorable as the puppy. It was Sakura, who had evidently had her share of Tsunade's sake, who squealed followed closely by Ino. The noise roused the little one and it opened eyes as red as the blood in Naruto's veins. Now that he thought about it, the eyes were the exact same as the nine tails. He's adorable and all, Naruto said, somewhat helplessly looking up at Kiba, but what do you expect me to do? Take him in. Kiba shrugged as he petted Akamaru. It's your choice. Truth is, he was born right when shit went down and pain flattened most of the village. He's the only puppy that survived and he only did so, because of you. Naruto blinked. Me. I thought animals weren't revived. Kiba shook his head. They weren't. But that's not the point. This one here, he lived because of this chakra foam you threw around when, well. He left it hanging there and Naruto nodded in understanding. The nine tails chakra must have found its way into his system and kept him alive. Carefully, he reached out to touch the puppy's head. It yipped a little in his hand. Quite so suddenly, the fox woke in his mind. What the hell is that? He exclaimed and Naruto could practically feel him peer through his eyes. Usually, the feeling of the fox filing through his memories was quite subtle but not this time. It felt as if he intended to suck the knowledge out of Naruto's head with a straw. The feeling was truly unsettling and Naruto shivered when the fox decided that it was enough. What the hell? He cussed at the tailed beast. The fox's voice rang through his voice like an earthquake. Keep the pup. This little one has managed to absorb part of me. So what? Naruto asked, eyeing the puppy as it happily squirmed under Tayuya's touch who tried her hardest to appear cold in face of such overwhelming cuteness. The snort that rang though his mind was like a cannon being fired. He has a connection to me, like a mini Jinchuriki but the chakra he absorbed has lost its consciousness. He's like a child to me. Or at least the closest thing that could exist. You sound almost caring. Be careful, Naruto thought back but he received no answer. He could nearly feel the fox stewing in the back of his cage. Fine, have it your way. Naruto gently lifted the puppy out of the basket. Kiba him in the side. Gonna keep him? He asked. I guess so, he said carefully, glancing at Tayuya. When her eyes shone with glee and her lips twitched into a smile, he nodded. Yeah, we're gonna keep him. Kiba nodded. Have a name yet? He doesn't have one. Usually the father names them, but old Irem didn't make it, Kiba said, looking quite sullen. Naruto had to constantly remind himself that the older Ninken could speak perfectly fine. He briefly wondered why Akamaru didn't talk, but he brushed the thought aside. So, a name. You want to name him? He thought towards the fox. He could feel him stir in his cage. Yes, actually, I would like that. It was the first time that Naruto didn't have a headache after the fox spoke. Well, he pressed. I'm thinking. You do realize that this is the first time I ever had to name anything. Naruto rolled his eyes and took the time to relay to Tayuya what the fox had said. She didn't mind him naming the pup as long as it wasn't Inu or snake related. Naruto snorted when the fox cursed and loudly scratched the name Inu of the list he was making. While Tayuya was busy cooing to the puppy whenever she thought no one was looking, Tenten made her way to him. Good birthday so far, she asked. Her hands were behind her back, obviously hiding something. Up until now, Naruto said, but he frowned a little when he looked over at where Tsunade was pouring sake down Shizun's throat. But things are getting out of hand over there. Tenten laughed uneasily. Ahahaha, maybe a little. Anyways, she held out a scroll to him. Happy birthday. He thanked her and took the greenish scroll. It bore a simple storage seal, so he made quick work of unsealing it. A beautiful knife dropped into his hand. The blade of sleek black was a bit longer than your average kunai and attached to an ornate, dark red handle that was decorated with the Uzumaki swirl. Engraved into the metal were intricate seals, powerful ones at that. Karen and Sari helped. Tenten supplied when she saw him eye the seals. He smiled at her. Thank you, it's beautiful. She grinned. If the Uzumaki ever need to stock up on their arsenal, you know where to go. Definitely. Naruto laughed, sealing the blade back into the scroll and pocketing it. Time passed and at some point Naruto found himself unable to escape the ever-increasing amount of sake that was going around. After the third toast to his name he decided that he couldn't wake up with such a vile headache again and decided to call it a day. But they wouldn't let him. Damn drunks. Karen, Sari and Tayuya all sat at the same table, spinning a bottle as he came to sit with them, if only to escape Kiba lamenting about Hinata not noticing him. Something about it felt ironic to him, but he couldn't put a finger on it. How ya? Girls holdin' up? He asked but received no answer as the three of them had their gazes fixed on the still spinning bottle. Eventually it stopped, pointing at him. What? They were all staring at him, expecting him to do something. Drink. Karen barked, pushing the bottle over to him. What? But I'm not even playing. You are now. Tayuya slurred, slapping her hand flat on his back. Bottoms up. Somewhere behind him he could hear Tsunade agree loudly with his wife. Naruto grumbled but took the bottle all the same. What bad could it do? As the alcohol burned in his throat he absently wondered if all ninja were such hardcore alcoholics or if it was just Konoha. It was roughly an hour later that people started heading home. Hinata, being one of the less intoxicated guests alongside Neji, was busy arranging for those who were truly out of it to be brought home. Naruto could see that Tamari was dead set on going with Shikamaru, who in turn tried not to have a stroke with the death glare he received from Gaara. Sari had the dubious honor of heaving Karen back to the apartment while Naruto, who was also quite drunk, was sitting on the ground besides Tayuya as both of them studied the yet-to-be-named puppy chase its own tail. Think. He's ever gonna get it? Tayuya asked, swaying a little even while seated. Naruto shrugged. Guess so. Maybe if he wasn't running all the time, you know. URK, turning in circles. Shut up, lover boy, Tayuya moaned, the world's spinning enough already. Naruto snorted and bumped her shoulder with his. I dimly remember you told me you'd never drink again. Just this morning too. She waved her hand dismissively. That was in the morning. Now I'm drunk and it's in the evening. Times change. Naruto shook his head, instantly regretting the action as his world moved in ways it definitely should not. I just don't. Don't want Cha to be angry at me again when we wake up in the same damn bed. Quite suddenly Tayuya punched his arm. But I don't mind waking up in the same bed. She, too, shook her head and she, too, could nothing but regret it. Damn spinning shit. I mean, I never slept any better in my whole damn life. Nodding sagely, Naruto agreed with her. Yeah, I get what you mean, your was so perfectly nestling my. Tayuya's palm impacted hard enough with his mouth to throw his head back. She was bright red in the face and the alcohol seemed to evaporate through her ears. I dare you to say another word. I dare you, lover boy. Naruto's stunned and drunk countenance made way for absolute seriousness. He grabbed her hand and held it with both of his own and stared directly into her eyes. No, I can't keep quiet about this. You're as absolutely perfect. Poetry in motion, I say. Now it was Tayuya's turn to look absolutely gobsmacked. What the air you? Shut up. You can't just. I can and I damn well will. Naruto seemed to have reached a whole new level of drunk. Obscene honesty. Oh boy, you are the most beautiful thing I have ever raked my eyes over, and I swear on Ero Sennin's grave that I was never harder than I was for you. Okay. Maybe he was just horny. Horny and drunk. In any other situation, and without any alcohol, Tayuya would have ripped his head off and shoved it where the sun wouldn't dare to shine, but alcohol, and hormones for that matter, did funny things to a girl. Really? She asked breathlessly, sounding almost awestruck by his hard facts. Naruto nodded vigorously, his enthusiasm far too akin to a green spandex wearing man who was currently hunting for Kakashi to drink him under the next table. Absolutely. He brought a hand to her face, tracing her jawline and lips tenderly. Never have I wanted to kiss someone as much as you, to strip you down and kiss every inch of your beautiful skin. To take your hips, spread your beautiful legs and. Abruptly he stopped, and Tayuya, who had a strangely dreamy expression on her face while drooling slightly, snapped out of it and found Naruto slumped forwards. She could only hold him up for a second before she, too, suddenly blacked out, courtesy to a chop to the neck. Yugao, Tsunade slung over her shoulder, stood over the two unconscious Uzumaki and shook her head. I swear, Uzumaki blood is no good with alcohol. Yeah, I actually remember that, Sakura said, rubbing her chin. I woke up on a tree in the academy yard. Ino raised an eyebrow at her. Wasn't the party on the other side of the village? Sakura scoffed. Like you were any better. I remember seeing you trot out of the Hyuga compound in your underwear. I was there too, Karen interjected. Sheesh, we really can't hold our liquor. Sari was just all the way ashamed of her fellow kunoichi. Drunks, she would have mumbled if she could. Tayuya awoke feeling warm. Too warm, in fact, but also incredibly comfortable. For whatever reason it confused her that she didn't have a headache, but she wasn't going to complain. Instead she nestled herself further into the warmth. She chose to ignore the fact that her warmth grunted when she adjusted her butt to it. Refusing to open her eyes despite the sun rays that fell into her face, she moaned in displeasure. She used her elbow to poke the warmth in the ribs. Sun. She whispered, make it stop. There was a grunt, and a bit of the warmth that had been wrapped around her shifted for a moment before returning to pleasantly hugging her. Soon enough the sun was switched off, or something along these lines, and she returned to pleasantly being held, stark, by Naruto, also stark. Ah, the glory of the morning after. Tayuya's eyes opened wide, but she couldn't see shit. Maybe the idiot had really taken out the damn sun. Huh, nice. But she had to take care of matters at hand. Well, at her butt, really. She was resting on his biceps, his hand tangled into her hair, his other arm was laying on her side, his hand flat just below her chest, and we all know where the other important limb was. And Tayuya was very much aware of it. Pleasantly aware of it. And that's what scared her. Oh, she wasn't a shy one, not usually. But around Naruto things were different. She remembered spending hours on a blank metal table waiting for the examinations and tests to be done with. She didn't ever even flinch when Kabuto manhandled her into the needed position. But have Naruto's fingers brush her side and she was a blushing mess with its heart close to implosion. He hadn't ever hurt her, didn't ever give her a reason to he'd betray her. So why was it so hard for her to be calm when she was actually safe for once in the grasp of another? She shifted and Naruto grumbled a little. He drew her ever closer and his hand rose just enough to brush under the underside of her. And, oh, how she shuddered. In some sort of ecstasy she couldn't have named before. She sucked in her lips, gnawing at them as she tried to move upwards so his hand wasn't touching her any more than she could take. The fact that she could have woken him up escaped her completely. Or maybe she just didn't even want to. She shifted high enough for his breath to tickle her neck as he began nuzzling his face into her soft skin. Tayuya mewed when he suddenly shifted his hips and the warmth was suddenly between her thighs. Oh dear, things were getting hot, really hot, for Tayuya in ways she hadn't experienced before. Naruto pulled her back down, back into him and he was suddenly pressing against her in all the right ways and a breathy moan escaped her. For all that is holy. Tayuya's mind was more than a little foggy, her lower body more than a little hot. She fidgeted, not because she was uncomfortable, more because she needed him even closer to her. Naruto had been hugging her before, but now that she was kind of moving her hips he suddenly really pressed her against him, the delicious friction and the pressure of his skin on hers. Tayuya felt like she was going crazy. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. She breathed, her breath probably hot enough to give produced a small puff of steam. Her hand moved backwards into his hair, pulling him into her neck. She couldn't tell if he was awake or asleep, if he was dreaming or just moving on the same instinct as her. But then he kissed the nape of her neck and she didn't know what to do. He was awake. Awake while she was grinding herself against him. She had planned on saying something but he suddenly twitched against her center and she choked on her words. His hand curled deliciously against her skin, igniting a fire in her chest that traveled lower and lower with every second. Tayuya was certain her nipples could cut diamonds by now and judging by the unique feeling on her upper thighs she was wet. Wet enough to be leaking. God damn it, she was horny beyond belief. And, judging by his harsh breathing and the degree of hardness of his, hardness, so was he. The hand in her hair turned her head and she suddenly stared into his eyes, despite the darkness. Tayuya, he breathed against her, his heart jumping against her shoulder. We can't. I'd love to but. He had trouble conveying what he wanted to tell her, the fog of the heat receding just enough for her to open her dry mouth. I don't understand. Her word failed her. Why couldn't they? What couldn't? He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her ears. His words were hot against her skin and she found herself leaning against him. Not yet. Just not yet, Tayuya. Why? She huffed back. Why the not? I want you, badly as you can maybe tell. She moaned a little as she shifted herself against him. No shit. But I want you to do this when we're both ready. And not because we woke up horny as. Naruto swallowed. He feared to do something wrong, that this next step could be too early or hurt her. And he couldn't forgive himself for rushing things now. She chuckled dryly. She, too, was scared of this more than she'd like to admit. Horny? Yeah, horny and hard, lover boy. He pouted. Not like I could help it. Oh, I remember how you praised my backside yesterday, she said with a smug grin. Naruto groaned into her hair. Wow, you remember that? Tayuya just wiggled her prized and praised butt against him. I do indeed, lover boy. The fog had receded from her mind completely, which didn't make her any less horny. Just looking into his eyes had evaporated her insecurities as if she had imagined them all along. So we won't, she purred, but I guess there's a lot to do before that comes. Naruto swallowed thickly. Oh dear. Then again, he wasn't about to complain. Ino and Sakura nodded excitedly. Karen looked somewhat ill hearing things like that from her quasi-sister and Sari had left the room to search for Naruto, who should have returned by now. I knew there was something different when we meet the day after. Sakura exclaimed proudly. Ino snorted. Yeah, she limped. God stop. Karen pleaded. Can't we talk about how you unlocked the bloodline? Isn't that more interesting than my brother's penis? Oh, speaking of, Ino spoke up. Is he big? Staff. Karen wailed, covering her ears with her hands. Tayuya laughed heartily. You won't ever find out, Blondie. Besides, I didn't limp, and how I got Naruto to use his bloodline was just as hot. Karen facepalmed. Perverts, all of you. Sleeping arrangements were changing, slowly but steadily. After their escapades in the morning after Naruto's birthday, every night it was the same. They'd go to bed in separate rooms, only to end up in the same bed anyways. For whatever reason, both were too proud to admit that they wanted to sleep in the other's embrace. Naruto too confused, while Tayuya was too suborn, red embarrassed. It came down to the uncomfortable situation of the two of them running into each other while sneaking out of bed, fully intending to creep into the other's room. And, considering it was about 2:30 in the wee hours of the morning, both did a very good job of appearing wide awake in under a second. Ah! They both exclaimed and took a step back. Tayuya bounced back faster than Naruto. I was just, getting some water, yeah. Same, Naruto managed. Headstrong as she was, Tayuya continued walking into the direction she was originally headed. Naruto chuckled, his heart warming as she still walked towards his door. Wrong way, he whispered. Cursing silently, Tayuya waddled after Naruto into the kitchen. He pulled 2 glasses out of the shelf that would have been too high for her to reach anyways. Filling it up at the faucet, he placed it in her hands. She nipped absently at it as she watched Naruto. He was shirtless. Nice. She was certain that he was warm too. His warm skin against hers, that sounded just like what she needed now. Wonderful warmth and abs. Tracing them would be nice. She wondered if he would shiver if she touched him. Would he groan? This deep rumbling noise he made in the back of his throat. MMMH, she really wanted to hear that right now. Tayuya. His voice made her blink. She had nearly dropped her glass. Looking up, she found that Naruto was unusually close to her. She also found that her hand rested on his stomach. Curious, she curled her fingers against his skin and dragged her nails down. He growled lightly. She backed away just a little and downed her glass in one go. Tayuya met his eyes unflinchingly. She had enough of this tiptoeing. Bed. Now. She didn't look back to see if he was following her, she didn't need to. Not a second after she had lifted the duvet of his bed, his arms were already around her. They didn't go to bed alone again afterwards. The meeting room of the main building was bare of any furniture as of yet, save for the round table in the middle. At said table sat the wholesome of the Uzumaki clan plus Tsunade. It was the very first unofficial meeting of the clan. The general public had no idea that the clan was taking position in the village again, and until the wedding day, things were supposed to stay that way. The topic of this meeting were the future plans of the clan. Naruto had also things he needed to relay to Tsunade, and in his own new home with enough silencing seals to contain Sakura's screeching seemed to be the best choice for that. Karen was already planning to build a facility on the premise of the clan that would act as her research center for sealing and medicine. Sari's request would be to get the manpower to retrieve scrolls and texts from the ruins of Uzushio so as much as possible of the clan could be preserved. Naruto had of course agreed to both girls' desires. Tayuya wasn't exactly needed to attend the meeting. She was simply there to tease Naruto, her favorite activity besides training and playing her flute in the garden. Okay, Tsunade said, rubbing her temple, we can dispatch a team with you in about 2 months' time. We really need to get this wedding out of the way. She glanced over at Naruto, who had a strained expression on his face while Tayuya looked absolutely unconvincing in her innocent pose. I don't have to expect any problems there, do I? Naruto swallowed and moved Tayuya's foot from his lap. No, I don't think there's going to be any sort of problem. On our side, at least. But that can wait. Tsunade nodded slowly. I see, or at least I think I do. Karen. In response, Karen slid a scroll over the table to the Hokage. I plan on building a lab on the premise. For sealing and medicine, preferably combined. That got Tsunade going. Now that sounds interesting. I was going to ask about the contribution in the first place. Contribution? Tayuya parroted, giving Naruto a break. Just as he thought he might have time to cool down, Tayuya sat herself down in his lap. No one seemed to see, or at least didn't care. When he exhaled carefully, she smirked deviously back at him. Yes, Tsunade confirmed, like the restaurants and food trade of the Akamichi, the deer of the Nara and the military support from the Aburame, Hyuga and Inuzuka. You get what I mean. If the Uzumaki contribute in terms of research and seals, that should be more than enough. Granny, Naruto spoke from Tayuya's shoulder where he rested his head, I hope you get that we don't have the capacities for any of that yet. We'd have to request D and C rank missions for workforce and I don't think we can afford that. No, actually I'm sure we can't. Tsunade blinked. Yes, that is absolutely right. I didn't expect you to think that far ahead, Naruto. The clan head snorted. You expected me to do this job but didn't expect me to do it right. This is my family we are talking about, of course I'll think ahead. Shaking her head, Tsunade brought a hand to her forehead. This boy was growing up faster every day. Hell, he was already married. Gods, she was getting old. Was this how Sarutobi must have felt? While Karen discussed the details of her plans with Tsunade, Tayuya turned in Naruto's lap until she eventually straddled him. You just love this, don't you? Naruto asked her. She grinned. Yeah, I love making you squirm. Naruto returned the grin and leaned forward, lightly biting a spot on her neck, the very same that had once been covered by her curse mark. The skin was still somewhat tender and more sensitive than it normally could be. When she gripped his shoulders tightly and sucked in a shuddering breath, he smiled. Two can play that game, Taiyu. The gleam in her eyes was tripling his blood pressure. I feel like we could cross the line tonight, lover boy, she purred lowly into his ear. Oh God, how did he deserve this woman? He was about to kiss her when Tsunade cleared her throat. We'd all be happy about children, she said, just don't make them when I'm in the same room. Tayuya huffed and glared at the Hokage. You won't stop me. Better leave the room, hag. Tsunade growled, but said nothing on the matter. She shook her head. Anyways, Naruto, you wanted to speak about something. Broken out of his daze, Naruto reluctantly moved Tayuya out of his lap. Yes, he said, I need an Anbu around the premise, preferably Yugao. And why is that? Naruto sighed. I suspect Danzo is keeping us under surveillance ever since Karen and Sari arrived. I can always sense one of those emotionless puppets near. The Hokage frowned. You can. Right now too. No. They don't dare come too close since I killed one a week back. Tsunade dropped the cup she had been bringing to her lips. You what? You heard me, Naruto said. I killed one and sent his corpse to Danzo. Ever since they keep a greater distance from me and Tayuya. Oh, Tsunade cursed lowly. Why did you? You could have informed me. The smirk on Naruto's face was devious. It was a matter of the clan, nothing you need to concern yourself with, Lady Hokage. No, you won't pull this shit on me. Tsunade snapped in irritation. It's bad enough that Hiashi pulls that every time a branch member is suddenly unavailable. I don't need you murdering people and keep it under the rug. Naruto frowned. I wouldn't have to murder shit if you would deal with Danzo the way it was needed to be done. Tsunade exhaled through her nose. She glanced at Tayuya. Girl, I can't decide if you were a bad influence or if the language really is a clan thing. Tayuya snorted. Sure is. The only thing I do to him for certain is get hard. That and sleepless nights. She grinned. Like last night, for that matter. Ain't that right, lover boy? The halfway dreamy, halfway embarrassed expression on Naruto's face was all Tsunade needed to see. Maybe I should have just tried once more with the kids on my own. Karen laughed quietly. Not that bad of an idea, actually. You are part Uzumaki, so, in theory, fertile till you're 60. Tsunade nodded tiredly. I know. I beg of you, don't tell the elders that. Anyways, you'll have Yugao. Just don't corrupt her. She glared at Tayuya, who shrugged it off. Naruto coughed. My point is, Danzo is trying something and I'm sure I'll kill him for it. So please, do it before the Uzumaki go to war against a single person and all that before the clan even officially returned. Tsunade sighed as her forehead hit the table. Duly noted. Shit. What a nice meeting, huh, lover boy. Apparently, Tayuya was having the time of her life. You want me to teach you senjutsu? Tayuya nodded. She sounded strangely meek to him. In return I can teach you genjutsu. Or something. Naruto shook his head. You don't need to give me anything in return. I'd gladly teach you. It's just, I'm surprised you want to learn it. Well, it's something only you can do, right? Tayuya was wringing her hands, Naruto noted. So, I thought I should be able to do it too, you know. Since I'm your wife and shit. Suddenly she growled. Why is this stuff so hard? It's not like me to be so timid and all that bullcrap. We sleep in the same bed for sake. I'm not good at this. Naruto blinked in surprise at her outburst. He put a hand on her shoulder but she shrugged it off. He grimaced a little, the gesture hurt. You're right, he said, hand still hovering over her shoulder, you being timid is not at all like you. That's more Hinata's thing and, really, it doesn't fit on you, even if it makes you adorable. She glared at him and turned her back on him. You're new to this, I guess. Just like me. And it's scary, terrifying even. The strength drained from his voice, leaving him hollow and frail before her. I just can't help being afraid. Afraid of you, turning me out, lying to me, hurting me. Because I know that no one else could hurt me as much as you could, so my brain screams at me to push you away, to wear this mask of blissful ignorance and brush all the connections away, the possible hurt and the pain. But I don't want to. He spun her around, both hands firmly holding her shoulders in place. She refused to meet his eyes, but he wasn't deterred. I just want you close to me. This one person that doesn't lie to me, that doesn't look at me like some time bomb only waiting to blow, who makes me laugh harder than anyone else. I never had that, and all of a sudden, I have you sitting on my couch, complaining about the weather and Sakura's voice, and I'm just like, holy shit, why does her voice make my heart beat faster? And I ask myself why your eyes make me hold my breath, why I can't stop staring at your hair, why your legs drive me crazy. Naruto had completely lost his cool. He rested his forehead atop of her head, breathing hard. Tayuya didn't fight it, she just silently let him lean on her, her mind empty and at the same time filled to burst. All she could do was listen and try to calm her erratically beating heart. Naruto took in her scent, the strawberry smell of the shampoo she'd never admit to have. To anyone but him. He smiled. You confuse me. He whispered. Around you I can't even think straight anymore. I feel like two different people. This boy, this loudmouthed idiot they know, and he smiled ruefully. And the guy that gets his forehead flicked when you don't want to eat the veggies, the guy that silently watches you try, and fail, I might add, to prepare dinner and can't help but smile. That confused guy whose eyes are drawn to you, whose thoughts center around you, and the guy that really likes being confused by you. That idiot that calls himself your husband. She was silent then, only the sound of her soft breathing could be heard as Naruto held his breath. Her head slid forwards and thumped against his chest. Lifting it again, she thumped against him again. And again. Idiot. He heard her mutter. If anyone's confused her, it's me, damn it. She raised her head and hit his chin hard, forcing him to take a step back. By the way, I get the part of you watching me just fine, you pervert. And then her confidence was back. The pride and power he loved to see in her eyes. I'm just too damn for you to comprehend. She flicked her hair sideways and grinned. It faltered a little in the next second but stayed on her face anyways. I can get my head around all that horny stuff, lover boy, and I'm sure so can you. I just never had anyone so close to me before. I don't remember my mother enough to. I don't even remember her voice correctly. She shook her head. Her hand flew up and she flicked his nose. You're right. All this stuff is scaring the living shit straight out of me. The thing is, you could hurt me more in just under a minute than Orochimaru could in all my time in that asshole's presence, and even then it wouldn't compare. And that is terrifying. And yet I'm still here. So either I'm crazy or I love you. The words, these two little words, they wouldn't leave her mouth. She felt like she had chalked on them. She shook her head, her grin back in full force. So you better enjoy being confused as much as I do, or I swear I'll. Her grin turned mischievous. Hog the blanket. Naruto gaped at her. This woman. You wouldn't dare. He managed. She flicked her hair again, a motion she knew that distracted Naruto greatly. Try me. She dared. Fine. Here's the deal, Naruto said. I show you how to use nature chakra and you let me into the blanket. Tayuya pretended to think hard about it, walking from side to side like she was making the hardest decision in her life. Deal, she said. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. Not because he was cold at night, but more like because the feeling of her skin on his was addictive. But I honestly expected you in more than just my blanket. Huh, her grin set his insides on fire. My panties, for example. Then again, I'm not wearing any. Karen shook her head. I swear, the two of you were ready to marry officially and had that kind of talk only after the decision was made. And why the hell are you both so horny all day? Tayuya laughed. Hell if I know. Besides, we both are emotionally abused people. Did you expect shit like this to run smoothly? That wasn't even the last talk like that we had. She smirked. And it wasn't the last time I invited him into my pants. You are terrible, Karen groaned. And what did any of that have to do with the chains? I was getting to that. Practicing sage arts wasn't easy, you know. Ino and Sakura returned, both carrying an array of snacks and drink. We miss anything? Sakura asked and handed a bottle to Karen. The Uzumaki thanked her and shook her head. Nah, just more innuendo. Ah, and sorry, said Naruto was dragged to an emergency meeting. Ha! Tayuya exclaimed. I knew the old hag wouldn't let him pace in the hallways any longer. Ino snickered. He was making the sisters nervous, I bet. The last time I saw he was muttering inaudibly and glared a hole into the doctor's forehead who had last checked up on you. Sakura snorted. Yeah, ever since then I have to do that. And you are already slacking, Pinky. So, where was I? Ah, right, that thing with the chains. Ino giggled. I knew you were a kinky one. The glare she got from Tayuya could have ignited a block. This is hard, Tayuya moaned, sitting on the parlor of the Uzumaki main building. She turned around to where Naruto sat behind her in the same meditative pose. How the hell am I supposed to draw it in? Naruto opened his eyes, solid gold in color, and tilted his head. Maybe I should give you a feel for it. Hang on. He moved around her and sat down face to face with her, taking her hands. I don't have any of the toad oil, so I'll just leak a little into you. Tayuya's grin was devious. I thought you didn't want to get me pregnant just yet. Funny. Really funny, Naruto deadpanned, though his ears reddened a bit. Close your eyes and try to feel it flow. Let it move with your own chakra, like adding water to a river. Tayuya nodded, winked and then closer her eyes. She took a deep breath and focused on her chakra. There was a warmth in her hands that had nothing to do with the skin contact. It was like hot jelly, it pulsed with power, and when it made contact with her chakra, it suddenly went haywire. Her hands felt hot, her bones grating against each other, and she gasped in shock. She opened her eyes to see her hand having turned to stone. But before she could even curse, Naruto's hand covered hers completely and it was back to normal. She breathed, it messed up the flow of my chakra completely. Naruto nodded. It doesn't give off the feeling, doesn't it? It feels so slow and calm, but in reality, it brims with so much energy, you can barely grasp it. Tayuya frowned. But I can't accelerate my chakra influx to that speed. It would set me on fire. Exactly, Naruto agreed. As I said, like adding water to a river. The water you add adjusts to the speed of the river and not the other way around. Taking in nature chakra is hard enough as it is. You have to absorb it, not let it wash over you, it'll turn you to stone instantly. Why wasn't my hand webbed? Like a frog? She asked, opening and closing her hand a few times. Because we are doing this differently than the toads. Toads, Tayuya. They really hate being called frogs. Tayuya snorted. Toads, frogs, whatever. What do you mean differently? He rubbed the back of his head. Well, for reasons I don't actually understand, the toads believe that nature is always at calm, peaceful and steady. Hence their unmoving meditation to gather the chakra. And while meditating helps, nature chakra is certainly not calm and still. I's a goddamn whirlpool of life energy, so volatile and violent in nature that it can crush mountains. The literal force of nature. And how the hell does that tie into me not becoming a frog? I have no clue. Tayuya glared at him. Really? What's with the speech then? He shrugged. It's why I think it's different. You aren't going to try and calm nature to stillness, you will accept it as wild as it is, just control it a bit so you don't get set ablaze. Tayuya snorted. Great. This could be fun. Ready? She asked and Naruto nodded. Cast it. Naruto nodded again and went through a few hand seals. Demonic sound. Phantom sound chains. His right hand flew to his lips and produced a sharp whistling noise that pierced the air on Training Ground 7. Tayuya went rigid, the vision of chains binding her taking hold of her limbs inside her mind. She grimaced for a second, then her eyes narrowed and her arms relaxed. She nodded to herself as she flexed her hands. Not bad, she called out to him. But you need a stronger image of the chains in your mind for it to last until you can mentally melt the opponent. Relaxing his stance, Naruto nodded. Okay. So, I imagine chains binding you, but the image needs to be clear. I solidify it with the chakra I force in through your ears by sound and then control the vision once inside. He looked up at her. Do I need to keep up the whistling? She shook her head. Nah, you have so much damn chakra you don't need to uphold the sound. Though it is harder because you use a single note, unlike me with my flute. This comes off harder than learning Sage Mode, Naruto grumbled. Stop whining and do it again, Tayuya chided, walking up to him and flicking his forehead. Rubbing the spot she had flicked for the umpteenth time that day, Naruto ran through the hand seals, concentrating hard to create the perfect image of a chain made from chakra. A chain he needed to bind her with. It needed to be solid, of the hardest of materials and long enough to span all around her. The links needed to be sturdy, unbreakable. Maybe also sharp ends so it could pierce surfaces and remain stuck. These chains could bind anything, hold anything as if a manifestation of his strong will. Chains of an adamantine will. Holy. Tayuya's voice startled him. At some point he must have drifted off too deep into his musings. His eyes focused on Tayuya and sure enough, she was bound by an unbelievable number of chains, keeping her in place. Then he frowned. Why could he see his own genjutsu? This should all be in her mind. Had he messed up casting it? Naruto stood straighter and an odd pulling sensation invaded his mind, present just above the small of his back. His eyes then took in the shadows in front of him, shadows of something overhead. That in itself was strange because they were standing in an open field. Nothing should be overhead. Looking up his eyes widened and he would have taken a step back in shock if not for the pulling on his back. Holy. He echoed Tayuya. There were chains. Chains coming out of him. He sucked in a breath. This was real. Real chains, somehow formed out of his back were binding Tayuya. And he willed them to do it tightly, painfully. As if the realization had banished them, the chains suddenly turned into dust of light golden color. Even as Naruto sprinted towards her, Tayuya remained in the same position the chains had held her in, totally gobsmacked. Naruto brought his hands to her face. Tayuya, are you? What the was that? She shouted, her arms suddenly gripping his shoulders. I don't if I know. Naruto shouted back. Are you alright? Tayuya griped her upper arm, where his chains had bound him and rubbed the spot. Yeah, they didn't even hurt, just held me. Naruto sighed in relief. Thank God. Never mind that, Tayuya said. Just what the hell was that? You insufferable runt. The fox's voice rang through his mind. You just had to have the same damn ability as her. Naruto blinked as his head ached. The fox, he said to Tayuya, he knows something. Well, what are you waiting for? She asked, flicking his forehead. Again. Go ask the fur ball. I dare her to call me that face to face. Tell her I dare her. The ranting was cut off as Naruto dived into his subconsciousness and opened his eyes to see the fox in front of him. So, he began, you know what that was. The giant fox scoffed. Of course. These chains held me bound in your mother for a good decade. My mother had them. Naruto asked breathlessly. Oh, she did, alright. She and Mito both shared this troublesome bloodline. I was strung up like. Naruto was no longer listening to the fox, his mind had other things to think about, like, holy shit, I have a bloodline. And other things along these lines. The fact that he was by now cursing even in his thoughts was a glaring indication for just how much Tayuya had affected him. His mind snapped back to reality and his eyes focused on Tayuya, who was studying his face intently. As his head sideways, she flinched as if caught with the hand in the refrigerator fishing for his last bit of cake. It's a bloodline, he said, grabbing her shoulders. She shook off being caught and her eyes widened. An Uzumaki bloodline, she asked him. I have no idea, he answered. I suppose so, I mean my mother and Mito Uzumaki, the first Hokage's wife, could do it. Tayuya inhaled a little to say something but stopped short and frowned a little. You didn't ask. Are you serious? Hey, I was surprised. He defended. When she just raised an eyebrow at him, he scoffed. Fine. Going back already. The fox was still ranting, apparently he never noticed that Naruto had left. As the fox was pacing around in his relatively free space, Naruto waved to get his attention. Oi, fox, he called out. The massive beast turned a glare on him, baleful and dismissive. What? He asked incredulously. Is this some kind of Uzumaki bloodline? The fox snorted. Wasn't that obvious? Shut up, furball. Don't call me that, the fox growled. Naruto huffed. It's not like your furry ever gave me a other name to call it by. If looks could kill, Naruto would have been dead on the spot. It's Kurama. Remember it well, flesh bag. You know, now I'll insist on calling you furball, thank you very much. You little. When Naruto returned, he found Tayuya only an inch from his face. This time, however, he gave no indication that he had returned. Her lips were slightly parted as her eyes lazily looked him over. One of her hands brushed a blonde lock out of his eyes and her face came ever closer and her head tilted a little. She licked her lips subconsciously and Naruto nearly did the same. Gosh, why was she so beautiful? He wasn't going to stretch this any longer. Tayuya was effectively thrown back when Naruto suddenly closed what little distance remained between their lips. Their hands were in each other's hair faster than the other could even tell, and Tayuya only fought for the upper hand for a second before she just moaned into Naruto's mouth when he pulled her whole body into him. It was just like this, making out heatedly, that Kakashi stumbled over them nearly quite literally, and he was about to just let them have this moment when Naruto's shirt suddenly obscured his vision. Judging by the state of it, Tayuya had just torn it off him. And Kakashi, even tough he was a pervert, was not about to let Tayuya's top join it. All right, love birds, Kakashi said, hopefully loud enough for them to hear, Go do that at home. They didn't build you that compound for nothing. The only answer he got was Tayuya's black thighs hitting his face. Oh dear lord, the Uzumaki were sure to grow explosively like that. Throwing the fabric at them, he sighed. Kids these days. Then he simply walked his way, reading a scene that was strangely similar to the one he had found his student in just now. And for the first time in all his life, Kakashi didn't feel like continue reading it. That's it? Karen asked. I kinda imagined some kind of enlightenment, not Naruto just trying to create reasonable chains for a genjutsu. Shut up. It just happened like that, Tayuya groused. Besides, how I learned it is even less spectacular. Naruto just told me what he thought of and I could do it the same afternoon. After you finished making out, Ino supplied. After we finished making out, Tayuya confirmed, grinning. And then we made out again. Oh boy, Sakura huffed, what a surprise. Suddenly, just as Tayuya was about to continue, the door was shoved open and the children barged back in, followed by an extremely annoyed Sari. She confirmed that the children were all inside and made to leave. Before she was out the door, however, she used a hand sign that no one needed sign language for to understand. Sakura frowned as she patted her daughter's head affectionately. Did she just flip as the bird? Karen snorted a laugh. Sure did. And I bet if we leave her alone with them again she'll do much more than that. Her lightning release is scary. The sun was nearly gone when Tayuya looked out of the window. It was growing colder, even in the room. She was starting to become a little tired. Gently patting her stomach, she wondered when Naruto would show up. Sasuke stood high up on the topmost branch of a tree, 2 miles or so from Konoha, and surveyed the wall and the gate for his last mission given to him by Orochimaru. Not that Orochimaru knew it was the last one. Sasuke fully intended on killing the snake the moment he tried and get his body. This retrieval mission was just his chance to get some intel on Konoha along the way and deliver it to Madara. He slipped off the tree, letting himself fall down into the shadows below. His Sharingan glowed crimson in the dark. All that was left was finding his target. It should be easy. There shouldn't be anyone else with hair like that and a mouth that foul. Bringing her to Orochimaru would be just as easy. The snake had fulfilled his purpose. After that, he'd go with Madara to further increase his